Greetings, true believers, and welcome to another legendary episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This week's tale begins over 3,000 years ago with the Greek gods of Mount Olympus. Zeus Panhellenios, the ruler of the Olympians, decided to sire a powerful son, one capable of combating future threats to man and god alike. The mortal he chose to mother such an offspring was the Mycenaean princess Alcmena, who was herself the great-granddaughter of Zeus. She was the daughter of Electryon, who was the son of Perseus, who was himself a child of Zeus. Zeus seduced Alcmena by taking the form of her husband, the Theban general Amphitryon, while he was away battling pirates. Amphitryon unknowingly returned to a pregnant wife, and the baby Alcaeus was born. And this was far from the first of Zeus's infidelities. His wife Hera tolerated them for a time, but was irritated by Zeus's insistence on conceiving his great champion with a mortal woman rather than herself. Meanwhile, Zeus's daughter, the goddess Athena, instructed Alcmena to leave the baby Alcaeus alone on a peaceful path. Athena led Hera to the crying child and asked her stepmother to offer her breast and feed him. Hera did so, but the baby bit down with divine strength, causing the goddess to toss him aside. However, the boy had already consumed enough of her Olympian milk to be granted invulnerability. This event inspired a legend in which Hera's breast milk launched into the sky and painted the Milky Way galaxy. Upon learning the identity of the child and Athena's role in what had happened, Hera swore revenge on the young son of Zeus. His parents renamed the child Hercules, the glory of Hera, hoping to appease the goddess. But Hera's first attempt at murdering the baby happened when he was only 1 year old. She released a pair of poisonous snakes to slay him, but the baby Hercules was so strong that he strangled both serpents. This frightened the boy's parents, and they approached the prophet Tiresias looking for answers. With the power to hear the gods, Tiresias learned the true parentage of Hercules, as well as his great purpose, and he relayed this information to Alcmena and Amphitryon. Regardless, the boy was raised in the city of Thebes as Amphitryon's own son. However, as a young man, Hercules accidentally killed his music teacher when he struck him in a fit of anger. Amphitryon sent Hercules to spend a year on a cattle ranch, both as punishment and as a way to better learn to control his strength. When a lion from the Cithaeron Mountains threatened his herd, Hercules slew it and made garments from its pelt. In 1291 BC, as he made the journey home, he came upon a group of barbarians traveling towards the city. Hercules attacked the barbarians, repelling them and defending Thebes. However, they were merely messengers of the Minyan king Erginus, who swore to bring his entire horde down on the city. Hercules returned to Thebes to learn that the Minyans had already sacked his home while he was gone, and disarmed the population, demanding an annual tribute. The only weapons remaining in the city were those left in the temples as offerings to the gods. Some argued that they should turn Hercules over to the barbarian horde in hopes of appeasing them. However, Amphitryon spoke on his son's behalf, insisting that Hercules did what he thought was right. The king Creon did not wish to give the barbarians any more than they had already taken, much less their mightiest warrior. Knowing their dungeons could not hold him, Creon asked Hercules to voluntarily submit to their custody until a decision could be reached, to which he begrudgingly agreed. Several days later, the Minyans arrived on the edge of Thebes. Their king Erginus demanded that Hercules be submitted to them, and declared that their annual tribute would be doubled. Meanwhile, Alcmena and Amphitryon told their son the truth of his parentage and apologized for failing him. They presented him with new clothes, bearing a crest in honor of his victory against the Lion of Cithaeron. Adorning himself in the new raiment, Hercules broke out of the dungeon and marched towards the Minyan horde, surrendering himself to King Erginus. The barbarians attempted to kill him, but the executioner's axe shattered against his invulnerable neck. This inspired the warriors of Thebes to come to his aid, armed with the weapons reclaimed from the temples, and a great battle began. However, it was during this battle that Amphitryon was fatally wounded by the Minyan king. Heracles killed Erginus and rushed to the man who raised him, still considering him his true father. Amphitryon died, and Heracles swore to live up to his courage and nobility, to be the hero his father always believed he could be. After the battle was won, King Creon allowed Heracles to marry his oldest daughter, Megara, making him not only the city's champion but also her prince. However, Hera was incensed by what she had seen and declared to Athena that her own son Ares would be the true champion of Olympus. Shortly after this, Heracles joined Jason and the Argonauts on a quest to find the golden fleece of a winged ram. Their first destination on this journey was the infamous Isle of Fear. There they encountered creatures such as the mythical Medusa as well as the beastly Griffin. It's also been said that during his time with the Argonauts, Heracles encountered the multi-headed serpent, the Hydra. However, for many of his exploits during this time, it is difficult to separate truth from myth. As such, there are some conflicting accounts on how Heracles and Jason parted ways, and whether or not Heracles was present when they found the Golden Fleece. The currently accepted canon is that in 1289 BC, Heracles challenged Jason to a rowing contest and lost when he accidentally broke his own oar. He went ashore with his arms-bearer, a boy named Hylas, who Heracles had sworn to protect after killing his father over some unspecified slight. However, the boy's attractiveness caught the attention of a group of nearby water nymphs who then abducted him. Heracles searched for days, unable to find the boy. The Argonauts tried and failed to convince him to rejoin them on their ship, and eventually departed without him. As an adult, Heracles performed his celebrated 12 labors, in part to prove himself worthy of immortality to his biological father, Zeus. Because these events have fallen into myth, it is currently difficult to nail down a precise order of events. These labors were reportedly assigned by his cousin, the Mycenaean king Eurystheus of Tiryns. The first was the taming of the Nemean lion, whom Heracles strangled to death. The second, or possibly the third, was the slaying of the Hydra, a creature which sprouted 2 heads each time one was removed. Heracles was able to accomplish this with the help of his nephew Iolaus. Each time Heracles sliced off one head, Iolaus would cauterize the stump with a torch, preventing new heads from sprouting in their place. With the creature properly decapitated, Heracles pushed the headless body into a pit and covered it with an immovably large boulder, but not before harvesting a vial of its poisonous blood. Evidently, some of the heads survived and eventually grew a new body, and so the following year Heracles defended Greece from yet another Hydra. Another labor was the capturing of the Erymanthian boar, which was menacing the city of Sophis. There was also the hunting of the Cyrenian hind, a golden stag that was sacred to the goddess Artemis. This was either the second labor before the Hydra, or the fourth after the boar. To appease Artemis, Heracles tracked the stag for a full year and captured it alive, releasing it unharmed after carrying it to Mycenae. The fifth, or possibly the sixth, was the dispersal of the man-eating birds who had plagued Lake Stymphalus for years. Heracles succeeded in killing the birds, which earned him the ire of their creator, his own half-brother Ares. The sixth, or possibly the fifth labor, was to clean the 1,000 cattle stables of the exceptionally wealthy King Aegeus. Aegeus had previously traveled with Heracles as an Argonaut, and so the two men made a wager. If Heracles could clean the stables in a single day, he would lay claim to 1/10 of his livestock. However, he soon proved to have gotten in over his head in a fairly literal sense when he saw the sheer size of the manure piles. He shoveled for hours without making a dent, but then a rush of water passed through the stables, carrying the feces away. An eternal warrior known as Gilgamesh, or the Forgotten One, had diverted 2 rivers to accomplish this. Witnesses who saw Gilgamesh mistook him for Heracles, and thus this feat was misattributed in the resulting myth. The exact chronology of these labors is difficult to pinpoint. The slaying of the Hydra and the dispersal of the man-eating birds were both said to have occurred in 1271 BC, even though Hercules was also said to have taken a year to hunt the Cernaean hind. Furthermore, one source claims that the cleaning of the 1,000 cattle stables occurred in 1272 BC, placing it 1 year prior. These inconsistencies could simply be attributed to misreporting or misremembering, but it's likely that these first 6 labors occurred roughly around 1272 to 1271 BCE. The 7th labor was to defeat and capture the Cretan bull, father of the mythical Minotaur. 8 was the reining in of the man-eating mares of King Diomedes, which he accomplished by feeding them their master. For his 9th labor, Heracles traveled to the island of Themyscira in 1270 BC. His task this time was to steal the golden girdle belonging to Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, which she received from her father Ares. Heracles and Hippolyta were instantly attracted to one another, but the goddess Hera saw an opportunity to sabotage him and ruin this moment of happiness. Disguising herself as a shield maiden, Hera came down and alerted the Amazons to his presence, declaring that their queen was being abducted. And so the warrior women chased Heracles off the island of Themyscira with the girdle in hand. The Amazon queen, however, felt great passion towards the demigod and longed to be with him once more. His 10th labor was then to steal a rare red cow belonging to the three-faced monster Geryon. The 11th labor was to retrieve the golden apples from the tree of Hesperides, which was guarded by the dragon Ladon. He evidently accomplished this in the year 1268 BCE by beseeching the Titan Atlas for help. Atlas had been condemned by Zeus to hold the weight of the heavens on his shoulders for eternity. After reportedly slaying Ladon, Heracles offered to carry Atlas's burden for 3 hours in exchange for the Titan gathering 3 of the golden apples. Atlas also offered to bring the apples back to Eurystheus, but Heracles tricked him into holding the firmament again and made his escape. His final labor was to descend into the underworld and retrieve the 3-headed hellhound Cerberus. Although Heracles also apparently traveled there to rescue his friend Theseus from Pluto, the Lord of the Dead. However, upon returning to Thebes, Heracles found that a nobleman from Euboea named Lycus had killed King Creon, seized control of the city, and declared that Megaera would be put to death, along with the 3 children that Heracles had fathered with her. Heracles fought against Lycus and his forces, but as he did, he slipped into a berserker rage. Attacking friend and foe alike, the mighty warrior became lost in his own bloodlust, and in his haze, he even killed his own wife and children. Many witnesses, including Theseus, blamed Hera for what had happened, assuming the goddess had intentionally driven him to madness. Ashamed, Heracles never corrected them and later changed his name to distance himself from Hera. He took the name the Romans had given him and became known as Hercules, the Prince of Power. Some legends say that the blood rage which killed Megaera happened earlier and that the 12 labors were a method of atonement. This is backed up by the fact that one source claims that Heracles' trip to the underworld to rescue Theseus happened in 1277 BC, several years prior to the other labors. However, this same source still refers to it as his final labor. Again, these stories are a mix of myth and fact, and Hercules himself has shrugged off any attempts to precisely order the events. Either way, sometime later in 1268 BC, Hercules encountered the bloodthirsty son of Ares, Lord Kyknos of Macedonia. Kyknos was building a temple of human bones to honor his father, and wanted to add Hercules' skull to his construction. And so Hercules battled and slew him. Ares attempted to save his son, but Athena fought in aid of the heroic demigod. In 1264 BC, the Prince of Power was hired by King Laomedon of Troy to rescue his daughter, Hesione, from a monster belonging to the ocean god Poseidon. Liamadon of course did not mention that he had earned the god's ire by neglecting to repay Poseidon and Apollo after the two built an impenetrable wall surrounding his city. And so Hercules returned with Hesione, seeking what he was promised, a herd of magical horses that could run on water. But the king of Troy again failed to uphold the bargain, causing Hercules to fly into a rage and sack the city. The enraged demigod killed King Liamadon and all but one of his sons. Evidently, at one point Hercules was also responsible for the death of the Achaean prince Iphitus. As punishment, he became a husband and slave for the queen of Lydia, Omphale. She eventually released him from service, after which Hercules became romantically involved with another woman, Deianira. She was the princess of Calydon, and her beauty was said to rival that of the goddess Venus herself. However, it's been said that the demigod was often unfaithful. The river god Achelous was deeply in love with Deianira as well, and so in 1260 BC, he and Hercules battled for her hand in marriage. Of course, Hercules was victorious and Deianira became his third wife. On their journey home, the newlyweds needed to cross the river Evenus, but were aided by the wild centaur Nessus, who offered to carry them across. However, Nessus tried to seize the opportunity to capture Deianira and claim her for himself. In order to save his beloved, Hercules fired the deadliest arrow in his quiver, the one whose tip was dipped in the blood of the Hydra, the deadliest poison known to the gods. Before he died, the centaur told the woman that it was in her husband's nature to be unfaithful and offered her a gift. He claimed that a centaur's blood would act as a powerful aphrodisiac, which would renew Hercules' love if he ever cheated. Believing the lie, Deianira took the creature's blood-soaked clothing. Sure enough, several years later, in 1246 BC, Hercules' third wife discovered his infidelity. She carefully placed the blood-stained tunic across his chest, not realizing that it had been poisoned by the Hydra's blood. Hercules threw himself onto a flaming pyre prepared by his shield-bearer, hoping to burn the poison out of his body, but to no avail. His mortal body burned away, and for 3 days his spirit tumbled down towards the underworld. However, his sky father Zeus took pity on his demigod son and extinguished the flame which consumed him. Casting aside his mortality, he raised Hercules up to the heights of Mount Olympus, where he awakened as a god. Like many myths about his life, Hercules has told multiple contradictory accounts of his apotheosis. In one telling, it was not a blood-soaked shirt that Deianira received from the centaur, but a so-called amulet of love, which she presented as a gift to her husband, who she still called Heracles. In this version of events, the angry blood of Nessus mixed with the poisonous Hydra blood had grown even more toxic over the years, and the amulet itself caused Heracles to burst into an unquenchable flame. He fell into a river and washed away for several miles before he pulled himself out of the water. There he was found by his father Zeus, who cast away not only Heracles' mortal pain, but also his former name, so that he would become known as Hercules. This telling is more likely myth than fact due to the contradictions with more established versions of events. However, this does demonstrate again that the myths and stories regarding Hercules' past must be taken with a grain of salt regarding the finer details. Regardless, the common elements across the disparate versions of these events are the treachery of Nessus and the poisoned blood. After the end of Hercules' mortal life, Eurystheus, the king who prescribed the 12 labors, attempted to eradicate all record of the demigod's existence. However, he was defeated by Hylas, the son of Hercules and Deianira, and brought before Alcmena. Eurystheus tried to explain that he was merely doing the will of Hera, but Hercules' enraged mother gouged out his eyes before Hylas decapitated him. However, Eurystheus was subsequently resurrected by Hera to be used against Hercules in modern times. Meanwhile, in Olympus, Hercules took his fourth wife, Hera's favorite daughter Hebe, the goddess of youth, but they eventually grew estranged. He would occasionally return to Earth and had further conflicts with his brother Ares, the god of war. Hercules has also claimed to have participated in the first Olympic Games while completely nude. In 130 BC, he encountered a time-traveling adventurer known as the Thing, who he would more properly meet over 2,000 years later. And at some unspecified point in the past, Hercules first met his equal when Thor, the Asgardian god of thunder, stumbled upon a secret passage to Olympus. Their first battle was over a fairly petty squabble, for as they stood on opposite sides of a bridge, each god insisted to be the first to cross. This disagreement was enough for Hercules to pit his golden adamantine mace against Thor's Uru hammer. The two divine opponents traded blows, neither one able to gain a clear advantage over the other. Their battle continued until Zeus arrived and commanded them to stop. The Lord of Olympus sent Thor back from whence he came, but not before he and Hercules clasped hands in respect and friendship. During World War II, Hercules helped form the Greek underground and battled Nazis in Europe while posing as the Atlantean warrior Namor the Submariner, hoping to avoid the notice of his father Zeus. Sometime later, he first met the mutant adventurer Wolverine. The two initially competed for the affection of a red-headed woman, but they soon became friends and drinking buddies. These trips were usually done without Zeus's knowledge or permission, but in modern days, Hercules was sent to Earth by his father. He again put his skills to work, aiding mortals with his godlike strength. But he also made sure to enjoy the people and pleasures of the modern world. And by happenstance, Hercules encountered Thor's beloved, Jane Foster, who took the demigod on an innocent date during one of Thor's many disappearances. However, the Prince of Asgard can sometimes be a jealous god, and this led to another battle between the two immortals. In the midst of this fight, Thor's father Odin reduced his son's strength by half as punishment for his rashness. And indeed, a weakened thunder god was no match for the Prince of Power. Hercules enjoyed the accolades he received from his victory. However, he was soon tricked by Pluto, the lord of the underworld, into signing a contract binding him to his service. Pluto was aided in this plot by the Amazon queen Hippolyta, who harbored passion for Hercules and felt spurned by him. Fortunately, a rejuvenated Thor came to his aid, helping Hercules escape from Hades. However, the contract still stood and Hercules was forbidden from fighting on his own behalf. Of course, Thor would not stand idly by and fought as Hercules' champion, causing much damage in the underworld. As a result, Pluto released Hercules from the contract, allowing him to go free. Hercules and Thor renewed their friendship, kicking off their jovial rivalry. The Prince of Power then returned to Olympus, his sojourn to Earth at its end. But not long after that, Hercules was bewitched by the Asgardian Enchantress. With his mind clouded, Hercules battled Thor's mortal allies, the mighty Avengers, at the behest of the villainous goddess. Fortunately, he was able to come to his senses without injuring any of the earthly heroes. But because he had left Olympus without permission, he was banished from his home for a full year as punishment. The Avengers offered the Olympian one of their rooms during his stay on Earth. He lived and fought alongside them, soon becoming a full member of their roster. When he eventually returned to Olympus in an attempt to regain his father's favor, Hercules found his home abandoned. Behind this was Typhon, the being who had fathered monsters such as the Lernaean Hydra, and thus had his own vendetta against Hercules. In the hero's absence, Typhon had extinguished the Promethean flame and banished the Olympian gods to the land of shades. Hercules was then banished there as well, but Zeus was able to use his power to return his son to Earth. With the mighty Avengers supporting him, Hercules battled and defeated the terrible Typhon. Thus did the Prince of Power prove his worthiness anew and reclaimed his position among the gods. However, Hercules soon grew restless and, after a disagreement with Zeus, returned to the mortal realm again. This time Zeus dispatched his divine huntsman to retrieve his son. The huntsman summoned ancient monsters to fight for him, but they were defeated by the combined efforts of Hercules and the Submariner. This reminded Zeus of the nobility that mortals were capable of. Hercules returned to Olympus and Zeus forgave his transgression. Sometime later, Ares joined forces with the Asgardian enchantress in an attempt to conquer Olympus. Hercules was rendered amnesiac by the sinister pair and cast down to Earth. Fortunately, he was eventually found by the Avenger Hawkeye. And so, a group of Earth's mightiest heroes assembled to defeat Ares and liberate Olympus. Time rolled on and Hercules continued his usually friendly rivalry with the mighty Thor. Together, the two battled old foes such as Ares and Pluto, as well as threats that were new to Hercules, including the Destroyer, Firelord, and Ego the Living Planet. After that, Hercules made his rounds, speaking on college campuses, offering his own unique perspective on mythology and boasting of his embellished adventures. However, he soon became ensnared in another plot concocted by Pluto, Ares, and Hippolyta. This scheme involved forcing Zeus to wed Hercules to Hippolyta and the Olympian hero Venus to Ares. This time, Hercules joined forces with an eclectic group of mortal heroes including the demonic Ghost Rider, the mutants Iceman and Angel, and the Russian Avenger and former Soviet spy, the Black Widow. This group remained together for a short time as the champions of Los Angeles. During this time, Hercules had a brief dalliance with his team leader, the Black Widow. And after the dissolution of the champions, those two fought alongside the Avengers again. Hercules also briefly allied himself with the Defenders, but, like many others who joined at the same time, quit after a single day. The godly hero remained on Earth, thoroughly enjoying his time there. He aided Earth's heroes against the forces of Surtur, the Fire Giant, after which he became an active member of the Avengers roster once again and remained there for some time. In his spare time, Hercules often partied and drank heavily. While he was out on one such excursion, Baron Zemo and his Masters of Evil overtook Avengers Mansion and captured their attendant Edwin Jarvis. Zemo even hired a woman to drug Hercules' drinks, so when he returned, he was even more inebriated. He attempted to retake Avengers Mansion single-handedly, but was badly beaten by Mr. Hyde, the Wrecking Crew, and the villainous Goliath. His injuries were so severe that the Prince of Power fell into a coma. The Masters of Evil tried to finish him off, but he was defended by Ant-Man and the Wasp. He was later revived by the legendary Prometheus, but was struck with madness upon awakening. He briefly fought against his fellow Avengers, but his sanity was restored by the sorcerer Dr. Druid. Not a moment too soon, as Zeus had blamed the Avengers for his son's condition, but Hercules was able to confirm their innocence. And so for a moment, Earth's mightiest heroes were honored guests in High Olympus. Hercules later fought alongside the Avengers during the Evolutionary War. However, Herbert Wyndham, the High Evolutionary himself, used his transformative powers to evolve Hercules into what was described as a state beyond godhood. Unable to control this new form, the Prince of Power disappeared. However, Thor later found his ally in the mysterious section of space known as the Black Galaxy. While there, Hercules was returned to his previous form by the cosmic space gods, the Celestials. He and Thor returned to Earth together, unaware that Herc's restoration was incomplete. Shortly after, Thor's spirit was merged with the body of his mortal ally, Eric Masterson. During this time, Hercules roomed with Masterson under the pseudonym Hercules. It also became clear that the Prince of Power was not his usual self when he began to show signs of fear in the face of combat. Furthermore, he would look to the night sky and give strange warnings of danger. Hercules was able to find his courage with sheer willpower, but it was still clear that something was wrong. With a Stark-built spacecraft powered by Thor's hammer, the two immortals returned to the Black Galaxy. They learned that the space gods had intended to in some way utilize Hercules in the construction of a new Celestial. When Hercules first returned from the Black Galaxy, this process was incomplete, and the Olympian had left a piece of himself behind. Upon returning, Hercules was recaptured and Thor witnessed the birth of a space god. Afterwards, Hercules was restored to his full, true form and returned to his allies. Meanwhile, over the course of this adventure, Thor and Masterson were again separated into two individual beings. After that, Hercules rejoined the Avengers again, initially in a reserve capacity, but soon became a full member once more. During this time, he met and fell in love with a woman named Taylor Madison. Initially, he was nervous about approaching her, a first for him, but he had some help and encouragement from his former lover, the Black Widow. However, unbeknownst to even herself, Taylor Madison was a creation of Hera, made to torment her stepson. While this scheme was exposed and Hera's hatred of Hercules was revealed for all to see, Taylor Madison faded away to the nothingness from whence she came, and Hercules was devastated. Zeus told his son to return to Olympus, but his callousness caused Hercules to angrily refuse. Because of this insolence, Zeus stripped him of the godhood he had given him centuries prior, leaving him weaker and no longer immortal. Regardless, Hercules remained with the Avengers and befriended his Shi'ar teammate Deathcry. He later aided her in returning to her home planet of Chandelure. The two enjoyed each other's company, but Hercules felt the need to return to Earth. However, when he discovered that the Avengers had seemingly lost their lives battling the psionic monster Onslaught, Hercules started drinking even more heavily. He briefly joined the Heroes for Hire, but was removed from active duty because of his alcoholism. When Earth's mightiest heroes returned, Hercules fought alongside them on several occasions, but did not become a full active member of the team again. Zeus at one point offered to restore his son's godly might, but Hercules decided to remain mortal for a time to better understand and appreciate life. When an alien pantheon known as the Dark Gods laid waste to Olympus, Zeus was tricked into believing the Asgardians were responsible, and commanded his son to attack Thor. However, Hercules trusted his ally and declined to strike. The Dark Gods were later defeated, and Odin aided in the reconstruction of Olympus. Unfortunately, Asgard later met its own destruction at the monstrous hands of the fire giant Surtur. In this Ragnarok, Thor and the Asgardians were all seemingly slain. From this great loss, Hercules fell into a state of rage and depression, and his drinking problem worsened. Seeking to take advantage of her enemy's weakened state, Hera recruited Eurystheus, who had assigned Hercules his ancient labors, to present him with a new set of 12 and film it as a reality TV show. The first, rather than battle the Nemean lion, was to capture a saber-toothed tiger from the Savage Land. The second was to battle an organization which bore the same name as an ancient foe, the terrorist group Hydra. His third labor was originally to travel far and capture a boar, so this time he was to go to the moon and snatch the Inhumans' teleporting dog, Lockjaw. His fourth labor was meant to test his hunting skills, but rather than a golden deer, this time he tracked the artificial creature called the Dragon Man. The fifth task was originally to eliminate a flock of man-eating birds, so this time he battled the Atlantean Atuma and his man-eating barbarians. For his sixth labor, where he once endured the stench of 1,000 cattle stables, this time he survived exposure to the Red Skull's dust of death. For the seventh labor, where he once proved his strength over the Cretan bull, this time he battled the monstrous humanoid known as the Abomination. The eighth task, originally to defeat Diomedes and his man-eating horses, this time Hercules battled the Mole Man's giant monsters. His ninth labor, in which he had previously stolen the golden girdle from the Queen of the Amazons, was this time to procure the shield of Captain America, which he did with regret and later returned. The 10th labor, originally to steal a rare cow from a three-headed monster, was this time to simply abscond from Latveria with a Doombot. For his 11th labor, instead of stealing golden apples, he borrowed a shield helicarrier and promised to return it. And of course his 12th and final labor would prove to be the most difficult of all. Originally his task was to delve into the underworld itself and battle the mythical three-headed Cerberus. This time he needed to return there, find his first wife Megara, and receive forgiveness for killing her and their children. Find her he did, and the son of Zeus humbly knelt before the mortal woman. And so did Megara give her forgiveness, and Hercules was able to embrace his first wife and their children one final time. Shortly after this, because their allies, the Asgardians, had been destroyed, the Olympians were attacked in their perceived time of weakness by the forces of Amatsu Mikaboshi, the Shinto god of chaos. To combat this threat, Hercules was recalled to Olympus and his godhood was restored. He even fought alongside his half-brother Ares in the ensuing battle. Mikaboshi was ultimately repelled in part due to the intervention of the other Shinto gods, but not before Zeus was seemingly slain by the Chaos King. Shortly after was the first superhero civil war in which Hercules sided with Captain America's forces. During this conflict, the Prince of Power destroyed a cybernetic clone of Thor that had been created by Iron Man's side, considering it an affront to his fallen friend. After that conflict, Hercules first met the boy genius Amadeus Cho. Cho was a friend of the Incredible Hulk, and so after the Hulk was exiled into space by the Illuminati, the boy anticipated his return. As such, he began gathering allies he hoped could help the Green Goliath find peace. Having crossed the Hulk and unjustly attacked him during his days in the Champions, Hercules agreed. However, when the Hulk returned, he declared war on the Earth, seeking revenge on the Illuminati. Calling themselves the Renegades, Hercules and his group attempted to ally themselves with the Hulk while talking him down from his violent crusade. They ultimately failed and World War Hulk ended with the monster's defeat, but Hercules and Amadeus Cho remained friends. They were both arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D. after that, and Hercules surrendered, considering registering with the government. However, this would have meant answering to his brother Ares, who was himself an Avenger at the time. Instead, he broke free with Amadeus and the two went on the run. This leads into the events of the series The Incredible Hercules, in which Herc and Cho worked together with Athena guiding them. During this time, in the wake of Zeus's death, his mortal corporation, the Olympus Group, had fallen under the control of Hera, who used her position in attempts to enact revenge on her enemies. Hercules was able to retrieve his father from the underworld, but since Zeus was forced to drink from the river Lethe, he returned as a child without his memories. Hera and her machinations were eventually thwarted, but at the cost of Hercules' life. After which Amadeus Cho was appointed the head of the Olympus Group by Athena. From this position, Cho was able to obtain a power capable of resurrecting Hercules. And not a moment too soon, as Amatsu Mikaboshi was returning to begin a chaos war which threatened to erase all of reality. Meanwhile, the Asgardians had already returned, reborn on Earth, and so Thor fought alongside Hercules as members of the God Squad to help defeat Mikaboshi once again. During the Chaos War, Zeus was also returned to his proper state, and afterwards he resumed his role as the King of Olympus. Following that, Hercules acted as a solo hero on Earth during the events of Fear Itself and Spider Island. Of course, he would also rejoin the Avengers when the call rang out and it was time to assemble. Still, Hercules had become infamous for his debauchery and drunken antics and set out to repair his reputation. He quit drinking and set about trying to improve himself as a man and a hero. More recently, Hercules joined forces with a group of Avengers to battle Nyx, the goddess of night, after she destroyed Olympus and his family. Over the course of this adventure, Hercules visited a planet called Euphoria, whose only goal was to fulfill the deepest desires of those who set foot upon it. As such, Hercules was forced to look deep inside himself and discover what he truly wanted. He thought he'd merely wanted to mend his reputation. He was able to stop drinking, but he found himself unable to stop boasting. Boasting of his life, his accomplishments, and of the legend of Hercules. Before he thought he wanted to live up to that legend, to be the joyful, raucous friend and hero. But looking deep inside himself, Hercules found that what he truly wanted more than anything was to be the kind of man who didn't boast, who had nothing to prove. More than anything else, he just wanted to help people. At the end of the day, the Avengers defeated Nyx and the universe was saved from eternal night. Meanwhile, Zeus and the other Olympians were reborn elsewhere in new forms. As for Hercules, he left the Earth and set out into the universe to become a hero among the stars. But not the kind of hero who boasted about tales of his own life. No, he just wanted to help people, and to hear their stories. It seems that in the end he truly did become the kind of man that his father, his real father, Amphitryon, always believed that he could be. And that, my friends, is the history of Marvel's Hercules. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, share the video, and subscribe for more Marvelous content. Be sure to leave a comment letting me know what Marvel hero or villain you want to hear about next, and as always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me, including my Patreon page, where for only $1 a month you can get your name in these special thanks here and vote on monthly topics to be added to the schedule. So until next time, true believers, Excelsior!